Uh, I'm grateful to have Camille Bell, who is one of my friends and a peer of mine. We've worked together in the past. She has some of the most extensive knowledge in computer science. Not only does she have a master's in computer science, she worked on the original ARPANET. She's worked with Grace Hopper. She pioneered things in email. She's done a lot of things. Join us in the Lean Coffee afterwards. Join our Slack. And tonight we're going to be talking about Sparrow decks. So let me frame this up. On the Zoom chat, we have 12 willing participants that are going to yell out things that are probably going to be wrong, and you're going to hear a bunch of voices. So there are 13 people online. I think everything else, Camille, can you sync up with? Can you explain?
Yes, except I also want that those of you who are on Twitch, I want you also to yell out, or at least speak loudly, about what we're going to have as guesses, and starting with birds and later moving to code, because this process works, but only if and only if you say your guesses out loud and say them quickly. I'll say that more than once, but I'm starting with that. Okay.
Yeah.
Is it me now?
Yeah, it's all you, Camille.
Okay. Anyway, hello out there. I'm Camille Bell. Thank you for the kind introduction, Joel.
Yeah.
And thank you for inviting me to speak to Canton coders. Today, I'm going to teach you how to recognize a number of code smells that you'll be using your innate pattern recognition ability. We will be using Llewellyn-Falco's Sparrow decks, and I'm also going to teach you how that you can teach other developers the same technique. Okay, and let's see. Okay, excuse me. Technical difficulties on difficulty is my side. Fixed it. Okay, that's me. And I'm a technical coach, among other things. That's the thing I love doing the most. I started developing code decades ago with programming languages almost no one uses anymore. In our field, you need to be constantly learning new things. I love sharing new discoveries with others, which is why I coach. At least it's a big reason why I coach. I also learn things from the people I'm coaching. Okay, smelly code.
No roses.
Yeah. Whoops, wrong slide. There we go. That's the slide that we're, okay, well, we're talking about not roses. We're talking about dirty diapers in smelly code here. Yep, as in it stinks. Smelly code's the opposite of what you want your code to look like. Your code may work, or at least for now, but it's a dirty mess. Whether you're working on a new greenfield application or a 20-year-old legacy app, you will have smelly code, maybe a little bit. If it's new code, maybe more, depending on the new code, but probably a lot if it's old. Veteran developers with decades of experience may immediately recognize smelly code. Less experienced developers seldom do. Smelly code isn't about aesthetics. It has consequences. And left to rot, it does more than stink. Smelly code adversely impacts your time to market, your enhanceability of the product itself. The worst case I ever saw, well, I'll tell you about that in a moment. It adversely impacts your cost to develop. It adversely impacts the reliability of your product. Mm-hmm. All four of those things, that is time to market, enhanceability, cost to develop, and reliability, may all be impacted at once. Worst case I ever heard of was code where it was so smelly and so brittle and so bug-ridden because it was so smelly and so large and had never been cleaned up, that for every 3 new lines of code that was added, one new bug slipped in.
Wow.
Yeah, really bad.
Wow. Wow.
So you don't want to be that code. You don't want to be anywhere close to that code. Now that developer that just knows when code is bad, that developer is demonstrating intuitive knowledge. Traditional classroom teaching engages conscious thought and analysis. And while classroom teaching may include some repetition, particularly in the early grades, it's not the usual approach to teach adults. Pattern recognition is different. We gain intuitive knowledge through perceptual learning.
Mhm.
It's not analytical. It doesn't use conscious thought. And it requires lots and lots of repetition and corrective feedback. If you don't have that feedback, you can just reinforce all of the wrong ideas. Prejudice is probably an example of that. Humans are really, really good at pattern recognition. The ability is hardwired into our brains. In early babyhood, we instantly recognize the faces and voices of our parents and people who care for us, distinguishing them individually and from others. Like babies, as adults, we don't analyze how we recognize people. We just do it. As we grow in experience, we learn patterns of many other things. You all probably know people who just know some things, but they don't know how they know them. Maybe you do yourself. Programmers with long experience often instantly recognize smelly code, frequently from a distance, even in a language they don't know. It isn't possible to learn everything through perceptual learning, but it is possible to learn many things. Whoops, we're not there yet. Sorry, something.
We're doing it live.
We're doing it live and we're having technical difficulties.
Fun.
Press the keyboard. Anyway, it isn't possible to learn everything through perceptual learning, but it is possible to learn many things. And we're going to talk about some of them. And instead of taking years to learn, with the right teaching techniques, you can learn quickly. Let's consider these examples. And here's where we're going to that slide with the funny looking chickens in it. According to Kathy Sierra, and recorded in several books, research journals, and articles, the most extreme example of quickly moving from total cluelessness to mastery with no idea how one got there is chicken sexing. It's important, if you're not a farmer or raise chickens, this may not occur to you, but it's really important to be able to tell the difference between a baby boy chick and a baby girl chick.
Absolutely.
If you're in the business. In a number of breeds, you can't consciously identify the sex of a newly hatched chicken. In no breed can it be done quickly, usually. Frequently, it can't be done at all. Chicken sex determination isn't possible for the brain itself. It is possible for the brain itself, but it's hopeless to determine the sex analytically. Yet people become startlingly good at sexing baby chickens. So here's the interesting case. In Japan, the Japanese identified a group of people who were master chicken sexers. They told them to teach trainee chicken sexers. They told them to, and the masters tried, but they couldn't. Either the masters didn't know the rules they were actually using, or how they were actually doing it, or the master chicken sexers were just guessing at how to teach. They couldn't teach what they intuitively knew. When traditional teaching failed, the Japanese tried something radically different. With this new approach, something amazing happening. And with this teaching model, although it's simple, it can be expanded to things of greater complexity. Many things, not everything, but many things. They took the trainee chicken sexers and presented them with a bin of chicks. The trainee then took a chick and guessed male or female, putting the male into the male or female bin. Immediately, the master chicken sexer would say yes or no. The chicken sexer trainee guessed the sex, and the expert immediately provided feedback, all in rapid succession, over and over and over again. At first, the trainee was guessing randomly, just putting the chicks randomly into bins. Over time, the trainee's responses were not random. They got better and better and better, and given enough time, became experts themselves without ever knowing exactly how they did it. The next example is a life and death one. During World War II, as you probably know, the Germans were busy bombing England all over the place. And there were a lot of volunteers who knew nothing about spotting planes who came out and volunteered to help spot the German planes. This was the World War II Virginia plane spotters in England. There were people who were really good at knowing what an in-plane plane and any bomber is than one of their own. So they had experts that really could instantly recognize the planes. And they had a lot of volunteers who were clueless. The English also tried to have the expert plane spotters teach trainees to spot enemy planes. And again, they couldn't do it. The experts didn't actually know how they were doing it. For every time the experts said they had a set of rules, they would find there were exceptions to those rules. And that made the rules useless. So they did the same thing the chicken sexers did. With the trainee next to the expert, the experts confirmed or corrected the trainee's guesses immediately. And they created new expert plane spotters that helped save England. We're going to do something that's a little less life and death. Well, maybe depending on your software, it's not, depending what you're building. But we're going to do something similar. Much like the chicken sexers and the plane spotters today, you're going to experience perceptual learning and pattern recognition. We're going to be using Sparrow decks created by Llewellyn Falco. Llewellyn is an awesome technical coach. You can find and download the Sparrow decks that we're going to be using today on Llewellyn's blog. Check out other cool things on his blog while you're there. And yeah, I'll provide the slides so you have the links that you might be interested in.
You have his GitHub repo because he also has these appified.
Yeah, he has all sorts of interesting things. And I think he's got links to all of them on his blog.
Okay.
And if he doesn't, get in touch with me and I'll find out where they are. He even has a mobile app for your phone.
Maybe in our audience right now.
What?
Maybe in our audience. Say hello, Llewellyn, if you're out there.
Well, if he's not on Zoom, he won't be able to accept and chat. Anyway, and Llewellyn can probably correct me on things I'm getting wrong here. So here's the process we're going to be using. You're going to see a picture. You're going to quickly guess what pattern it is. And you're going to quickly say that guess out loud. We're going to repeat this a lot. By the way, perceptual learning is what cognitive science, the cognitive science name, oops, that's not supposed to progress here. I guess it was just doing that. For things that we just know. We're going to start, we're going to start with identifying birds. When you've mastered those birds, we will move on to several code smells. So you're going to see a picture, you're going to make a quick guess, you're going to say that guess out loud, and we're going to repeat it a lot. Again, we're going to see a picture, make a guess quickly, say that guess out loud, and repeat a lot. Now, don't worry about being right or wrong. it's not important. Like the chicken specsers and the plane spotters, in the beginning, you probably will be wrong a lot. It doesn't matter. It is critical to guess out loud. This may feel silly. As a matter of fact, it's going to feel silly, but just keep guessing out loud. If you don't do this out loud and you don't do it quickly, it doesn't work. So it's time for some sparrow decks. We're going to be looking at song sparrows and house sparrows. So does anybody on Zoom immediately know how to recognize which is which?
Don't recall.
No.
Nope.
No.
Good, good, okay. So let me get out of here. And we're going to get into sparrows. As we have the Jeopardy song playing in the background. Okay.
This is great opportunity. If you have any questions, drop them in Twitch. If you have them in Slack, drop them in Slack. If we come to a spot we can answer, we'll answer those questions.
Okay.
Sparrow.
Oh, here, yeah, it's a sparrow.
Ah.
So here we have a sparrow. You're going to guess what type it is. You're either going to say song if it's a song sparrow or house if it's a house sparrow.
House.
Song.
Song.
Okay. And we're going to get a reply from this. It's going to tell us whether it's a house or a song.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Now we're going to have another picture of a bird. It's going to be either a house or a song.
Song.
Song. Song.
This wasn't the other bird, right? And this is going to get harder and faster as we go. Again, just keep making guesses. Okay.
House.
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 Song.
House.
Oh.
Song.
House.
It is a house.
Song.
Song. House.
Song.
Song.
Ooh.
House.
House.
Song.
Song.
House.
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 Song.
Song.
House.
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 Song.
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 House.
Song.
Song. Song.
Song.
Song.
Song.
Song.
Song.
House.
House.
Song.
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 House.
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 Song.
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 House.
Song.
Song.
House.
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 Song.
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 House.
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 Song.
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 House.
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 Song.
House. Song.
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 House.
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 Song. Song. House.
House. House.
Song.
House.
House. Song. House.
House.
Song. House. House. Song.
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 House.
House. Song. House.
Song.
Song. Song.
House.
House.
Song.
House.
House. Song.
House.
Song.
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 House.
What?
Song.
Song.
Song. Song. Song. House.
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 Song.
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 Song. House.
House.
Song.
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 House.
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 House. Song.
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 House.
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 Song.
Song.
House.
House. House.
That was hard work.
That
That was
it.
tough.
Because I was developing a better sense as we went along, based off errors.
Oh
Yep.
yeah.
I'm going to start this again and show you something that I think you'll find interesting, which is you notice that this sped up a lot.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Okay. As we go through this, and I'm going to take you through the first two because I actually did them. Notice how impatient you feel about how long it takes to get that feedback
Mm-hmm.
and how quickly you can answer. Now try it again, okay?
House. Song.
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 House.
Song.
House.
House.
Song. No.
House.
Song.
House.
Actually a female on the bottom.
Song.
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 House.
House.
Song.
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 House.
House.
Song.
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 House.
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 Song.
Song.
House.
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 Song.
House.
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 Song.
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 House.
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 House. Song.
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 House.
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 Song.
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 House.
House.
Song.
House.
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 Song.
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 House.
House.
Song.
House.
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 Song.
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 Ooh.
Song.
House.
Song.
House.
Song.
Song.
House.
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 Song.
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 House. Song.
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 House.
Song. House.
Song.
Song. House.
House.
Song.
House.
Song. Song. House.
House. Song.
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 House.
House. House.
Song.
Wow.
House. House.
House. Song. Song. Song.
Song.
House.
House.
Song.
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 Song. Song.
Song.
Song.
Song.
Song.
Song.
House.
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 Song.
Song.
House.
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 House. House.
House.
House.
House.
House.
House.
House.
Song.
House.
House and song.
House.
Song. House.
House.
I think I got all the same ones incorrect this time.
You notice how you did how you went faster the second time.
Yep.
Remember how slow it felt beginning the second time through?
The ones that still throw me off, Camille, are the ones of the back of their body with just the feathers.
That's harder to recognize.
Those are the hard ones. Yes.
Because you learned the chest.
That are harder to recognize too.
Yeah, the chest of the head is really easy to see.
Yeah, but if you see it enough, you really can recognize them. And I don't know about your area that you live in, but in the Washington D.C. area here, I live in Maryland, suburbs, we have pretty much exclusively house sparrows. The things that are with the house sparrows that aren't house sparrow, that don't look like this, but don't look like the song sparrows, are female house sparrows.
Yeah.
Just so you know. Yep. But they don't look like song sparrows either. In birds, the males are usually the more flamboyant in appearance.
To attract
So now that you can tell the difference, what type do you have in the Detroit area or wherever you're living?
I have no idea.
I pay no attention to birds.
What?
Robins.
Yeah, robins and
We're big Robins fans here.
Yeah, next time you're out there, though, you're going to have a hard time not singing house or song in your head.
now we will definitely be observing.
Now you'll be observing, and it's this is to train yourself to observe.
Are you trying to turn us all into bird watchers?
What's that?
Trying to turn us all into bird watchers?
Not particularly, but this was something that Llewellyn and a friend of his, who is a big bird watcher ornithologist, put together, and it's really important when you're sharing this with others to start with the sparrows. I'll tell you a story a little later about a colleague who did not, and that the results were not good. Okay, so we are going to now talk about duplication. This is usually the one I start with next. Different people do different things, and I've seen Llewellyn start with different ones at different times. Maybe I start with this because I find it easiest to tell whether something is. What we're going to do here, and everyone's going to yell out, is either duplication or dupe and distinct. Okay, so the code either is distinct or it's got duplication in it.
Distinct.
Got that? So what is this?
Distinct.
Distinct.
Okay, let's find out. You're right. Let's look at this code. What is that?
Duplicate.
Duplication. This one is pretty easy to see. Some of them will be. The nice thing about these slides with the code is, at least in this particular case, is that it's nice and blocked out so you can see that. Now we're going to move on to some, and like the birds, this is going to go faster and faster, and you're either going to say duplication or distinct. Everybody ready to go?
Yep.
Okay, and away we go.
Duplication.
Duplication. Duplication.
Distinct.
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 Duplicate.
Distinct.
Duplication.
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 Distinct. Oh,
Duplication.
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 Distinct.
No.
Duplication.
Duplication.
Distinct.
Distinct.
Duplication.
Distinct.
Duplication.
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 Distinct.
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 Duplication. Duplication.
Distinct.
Distinct.
Duplication.
Duplication. Distinct.
Distinct.
No.
Distinct.
Oh.
Distinct.
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 Duplication. Duplication.
Distinct.
Duplication.
No, distinct.
Distinct.
Duplication.
Distinct.
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 Duplication.
Duplication.
Distinct.
Duplication.
Distinct. Distinct.
Oh my god.
Distinct.
Distinct.
Duplication.
Oh, that was it.
Duplication.
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 Distinct.
Duplication.
Distinct.
Duplication.
Duplication.
No.
Duplication.
Duplication.
Get the word out.
Duplication.
Distinct.
Duplication.
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 Distinct.
Oh,
Distinct.
Distinct.
Duplication.
Duplication.
distinct.
Distinct.
Duplication.
Distinct.
Duplication.
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 Distinct.
Distinct.
Duplication.
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 Distinct.
Duplication.
Distinct. Duplication. Distinct.
Duplication.
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 Distinct.
Duplication.
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 Distinct.
Duplication.
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 No.
Duplication.
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 Oh man, it was hard to
That was
say the
hard.
words.
We get the job, Camille.
You're trying to get across the point that we duplicate way too much code.
It's everywhere.
It is.
And some of it you'll notice is subtler than others.
Yeah.
Started off with the really easy cases.
You know what was weird?
What's
Was
that?
the faster it went, it was almost easier to get it right.
Yeah. Why do you think that's?
Stop trying to read it and you just see the pattern.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the
Just the
it's,
spacing.
remember, we're trying to develop something that is not analytical. When you have a hard time to look at something, long time to look at something, you're engaging that analytical part of your mind, which is conscious. And what we're trying to do here is train your unconscious or subconscious. Not sure always what the distinction between those two is. But the point is the part of you that's not doing the rational thought, which is very valuable as long as it makes the correct decisions. And what we're trying to do is train it to make those correct decisions.
Yes.
Now, did you recognize it 100% of the time, even at the end?
No.
No.
No. You know what? That's not a big problem. You can get better and better at this by running through it more. But even if you're only recognizing 60 or 80% of the duplication of your code, that's 60 or 80% that you can then look at and improve that you might not have noticed otherwise.
And nothing says you have to only look at it once.
And nothing says you only have to look at it once. But don't worry about not getting 100% or not getting perfection. Focus on getting better and improving. And if you're, coaching or team leads or in some other role, as a matter of fact, even if you're a junior developer, now that you know this and some of the senior developers don't around you, you can share this with them, and everybody can get better because of what you've learned. Want to try something else, or do you want to go through duplication again?
Something else.
Something else. Okay. We're going to do another one that's fairly easy. We're going to look at long lines.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. And many of these things, you'll see that there will be some points that people will eventually start arguing about whether, this is long, too long or not. Now, what we're going to do here is we're going to either say long or short.
Short.
Either too long or it's short enough, but you're going to use just one word. We're going to either say short or long.
Short.
Okay? You got that?
Yep.
Got it.
What do you think this is?
Short.
Short.
Yeah, you might be right there. And it is short enough. Okay. How about that?
Long.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not even one line. They can. Yeah, that's just bad.
Eddie
Uh-huh.
wrote this.
Yep.
Long.
I would say short.
Long.
That's long.
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 Short.
Short.
Long.
Short.
Oh, because
Short.
Long.
Oh.
Long.
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 Short.
Long.
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 Long. Short.
Short.
Long.
Oh.
Short.
Short.
Long.
Very long.
Too long.
Short.
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 Long.
Short.
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 Long.
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 Short.
Long.
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 Short.
Long.
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 Oh. Long.
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 Short.
Long.
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 long,
Long.
Short.
Long.
Long.
Oh.
Long.
Short.
Short.
Long.
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 Short.
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 Long.
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 Short.
Long.
Too long.
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 Short.
Long.
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 That was.
The font size changes, and so it becomes relative. That's what makes some of them difficult, Camille.
Yeah.
I thought the ones that went multiple lines too, when clearly, if you think about it, it was too long, but then like the brain wasn't trained yet to put them all in one line when you.
Yeah, the same thing.
I look at them as separate, but really that's a severe case of conditional complexity, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, and there's area for disagreement.
Yeah.
But somebody in your team thinks something's too long. It's probably a good time to have a discussion about it.
Yeah, sure. Well, and like on the conditions, having things to reach to, like a name for a smell, like conditional complexity. Well, it reads fine to me. Oh, well, we don't do it like that because we want names on our conditions, right?
Mm-hmm. So recognizing code smells or possible code smells is the start of a conversation. And it's that conversation that can lead to new discoveries by your team, with perhaps new coding standards. Obviously, fixing the code that's potentially wrong and refactoring it. Do put tests around it first.
Please.
That's a different discussion for another night. But all of this can lead to better things for your code. And yes, some of them are really obvious and some of them are less obvious. And some of them that we showed examples here, it kind of depends which part of the code you were looking at as to whether it was too long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, it was interesting for me too, because I found every time there was one of those compound conditionals, every time one of those came up, I looked at it and I was like, that's short enough. And every time it was too long. And so it means that we've mistrained the way that we look at that, right?
Perhaps those conditional pieces of those conditionals could be combined into something that has a more clear name, for instance.
Yeah.
Maybe a method that checks out that conditional.
Absolutely.
Something.
The
Yeah,
inter-
those are beginnings of conversations for you and your team.
the interesting thing about doing that, though, Camille, is if you do an extract method on that, then you still have that chain of conditions, right? So now you have name on it, and it's better, but you may actually still wind up wanting to break that further into functions.
Yes, you may. And specific refactorings are, I'll discuss something tonight that's helpful into figuring out what pieces might get refactored, but specific refactorings themselves and what to use on what, I think is a discussion for another night.
Fair enough.
Okay? Because that's a lot more complex.
Oh, you're kidding.
Oh, yeah. So let's look at long methods. We've looked at long lines, right? Let's try long methods. And we're going to have similar, short and long. Okay? So what do y'all think about this one? What is this? Everybody at the same time. Say now. What do you think?
Short.
Yeah. Okay. And how about that?
Long.
Okay. And you can always tell if it's scrolling off the screen. Well, probably him.
That is a good clue.
A really good clue. So now let's look at some others. And go.
Long.
Long.
Short.
Short.
Long.
Short.
Short.
Long.
Short.
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 Long.
Short.
Short.
Long.
Long.
Long. Short.
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 Long.
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 Short.
Short.
Long.
Short.
Long.
Long.
Short.
Long.
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 Short. Short.
Short.
Short.
Long.
Short.
Long.
Short.
Long.
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 Short.
Long.
Long.
Short.
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 Long.
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 Short.
Short.
Long.
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 Short.
Short.
What?
Long.
Short.
Long.
Long.
Short.
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 Long.
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 Short.
Short.
Long.
Short.
Short. Short.
Short.
Short.
Long.
Short.
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 Long.
Long.
Short.
Long.
Short.
Long.
Short.
Long.
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 Short.
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 Long.
Long.
Short.
Short.
Long.
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 Short.
Long.
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 Long. Long.
Long.
Long.
Short.
Long.
Short.
Long.
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 Short.
Long.
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 Long. My God, that was a lot of long code.
I wanted to thank Eddie for letting us code review tonight, his code.
I have to show you some of my code sometimes. I haven't matched Ward Cunningham's standard yet, but I strive for that.
So there was a page that only had about 3 or 4 lines on it that most folks said was long. Some said it was short, and someone was say what? I don't want to share what that was about, but I think it'd be more interesting if you all said.
I think it was just because there were 3 brackets, so it was kind of hard to tell what it was.
Brackets and the line numbers were
The line number.
It's like 2,500 or something.
It was 2,000 and some odd.
Oh, okay.
And that was the giveaway on that one.
I thought what too. I just didn't say it.
And
I thought the giveaway on that, I didn't notice the number, but it was that like the training of that. If you don't see the beginning or the end of it on the screen, then we were kind of going with long on that. I thought that's where that was. For me, that's where it came, but I could see where it short would have come there. I thought some of these were kind of tricky, and it became a who could detect like a method signature quicker.
Yeah,
right. Because there were the tricks on like if it was a conditional or a for, right? Like then you think that's a method because you're looking at it really quick, but it's really like, well, if you can identify quickly that that's not the signature, then you make that decision quickly.
Well, and some of the methods were indented enough that they looked like they were other blocks, right? So
right.
Yeah. Yeah, I started
some
to get
cases
into
where
a
you
pattern of looking for the indentation, and then realized that there were methods that were indented and ifs and fors and all kinds of stuff that were not indented. So
right.
Trickier.
There are also some cases where you had multiple methods on screen, where you had the tail end of a long one and a short one right below, and instinct jumped to the short one because that's what I saw first, and then
and that's what you saw first.
Yeah.
But again, if you you can run through these slides more than once, and if you're looking at your own code, you can also get a feeling for like at the end of this one, even if you only saw the last few lines of it, from the else on down, you can get a kind of clue from, wow, that's an awful lot of squiggly brackets.
Yeah.
That's probably part of something very big.
Gives you a little hint of what came before, right?
It gave you a hint of what came before. But again, it's starting the conversations.
Yeah, that is actually interesting, Camille, from just the perspective of the knee jerk turning into a larger conversation. It is interesting.
Yeah.
I've never looked at these in that way. So you're creating a new understanding in me.
Well, like most things in the Agile space, it's about the conversation.
Well, sure.
Aren't we supposed to value, interactions over process? And that applies to the technical side too. That, there's this and there's that refactoring. But if we're not having a conversation with our team about it, our team isn't gaining from it.
Yeah. Don't ask Norman about that.
And the other thing is, so how many of you have, used things? So, there's some automated tools out there that supposedly find code smells. What do you think of the problems with that?
They don't find code smells. They find syntactical opportunities.
Yeah, there's even a problem with that though, too. What is it? As opposed to using a technique like this.
You're not learning?
Yeah. If you're relying on various types of linters, or you're varying, sonar cube and that sort of thing, you can be a lot more complacent about the code getting out because you'll fix it later.
Oh, good point.
That's one part. Another part.
We lose our level of awareness.
What's that?
We lose our level of awareness.
You lose your level of awareness. We lose our sense of urgency. And if you have a big legacy code base you're dealing with, it's just too damn depressing.
Well, maybe. I mean,
well, okay, so I will not mention names because we're not supposed to do that around here. But I have had a client who I looked at the Sonar Cube results from their code base, and they had like 7,000 or 8,000 smells that were detected.
Easy.
Yeah. So yeah, the code was a mess. The architecture was a big part of the problem. But you tell that to a bunch of fairly green developers and they just throw up their hands and go, ah!
Yeah, they don't know how to spell architecture, Camille.
Some of the architects don't either.
Well, fair enough.
Not just dev's fault.
They put it in their PowerPoints.
Yeah, I have a strong preference for architects who code.
Yeah.
The other aspect is, though, that if you're working with, say, a legacy code base, you're never going to clean it all up.
Probably.
Right? And therefore, you need to prioritize.
Always.
And the place to prioritize is one of the obvious spots is the part of the code you're in, because you're changing it anyway.
Yes.
Put some tests around it and think about refactoring. Again, some of the strategies for that can be topics for other talks.
The pattern recognition would really cut that down or cut down the time needed, because if you don't learn the pattern recognition, then you're like reading through all the code potentially to find the patterns.
Yeah.
But with this method, you're just able to get it more at a glance.
By teaching your whole team these techniques and some others, you can bring your junior developers up to, intermediate developers fairly quickly, especially if you pair a mob program. If you do this with mob programming, your team is going to really, really learn fast. And then you have them, run them through this, then have some mob programming sessions on some of their code, and they'll start to see opportunities.
Yeah.
And not just one or two of them, but all of them.
We need a deck for feature envy.
That is a different question. Yep. Interesting. Maybe you can do a talk on that.
Maybe.
I want to see you guess that one fast.
So Camille, just a question, and I hope we're not getting ahead of us here, but I think you already touched on it. So if I find a code smell, if we're looking at the code and we see that there's these issues, the suggestion is, if we haven't been doing code with TDD, we should go ahead and actually write a test and then refactor the sort of smelly code to make it better.
Don't touch your code unless you've got a test around it. There's a wonderful book called Working with Legacy Code. It's got examples in C++ and Java about how to partition and break your code down into pieces that make it more manageable, and how to test it. Because when you're working with legacy code, a big part of the reason it's legacy code is that it doesn't have any tests. In fact, if you have new code that doesn't have any tests, it's already legacy code. A greenfield project, you have turned it into legacy code.
Well, I got some people I want to give that little gem to.
Well, it's not original with me, but I forget who I heard it from first, but boy, it's true. Anyway, yes, you absolutely, before you start refactoring, you need tests around your code. Now, if you've been following test-driven development and you're working on that code, then you already have those. But if you don't, then there are a number of different techniques that you can do to do that. And again, that's probably a topic for a different day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can use approval tests. You can write various different levels of unit and integration tests, whatever. It depends what the piece of code is that you're working on.
Yeah, approval tests are pretty cheap, actually, right?
Yeah, they're pretty cheap to write. So that's pretty cool. And there's also significant value if you're starting with you know, a test-driven development approach to include behavior-driven development, but at the high levels. And you don't want a lot of those. You just want sort of enough. But again, that's another topic. We should probably have a whole bunch of talks just on testing. It's one of my favorite topics.
That's actually a great thought, Camille.
Well, oh, okay. So I'm going to talk about naming for a moment. Naming makes a difference, a big difference. And we're going to look at some things that have some awful and some good names in them. So when you have them, we're going to just say either good or bad on these names. All righty. What about this? How are these names?
Good.
Bad.
Yeah, it would be nice
Bad,
if
I don't know.
everybody said it. Same answer, everyone.
Bad.
Huh? What?
Bad.
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 You think they're bad?
They're bad.
They're really not bad.
They all start with P.
Wow, there was like one person who guessed good.
Well, okay, we're dealing with players and purses and in penalty box. Maybe it's hockey. I don't know.
They're descriptive.
This
but
one
not-
has
Bad. Bad. What does that even mean? In 32.
okay, and you will get arguments about whether naming is good or bad. Again, it's a great place to start a conversation. So now let's go.
Good.
Bad.
Good.
Good.
Oh, man.
Good.
Good.
Bad.
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 It's a bunch of gibberish.
Bad.
Bad.
Good.
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 Bad.
Bad.
Good.
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 Bad. Bad. Bad.
Good.
Good.
Bad. Good.
Oh.
Good.
Bad.
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 Good.
Good. Good.
Good.
Bad.
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 That's terrible.
Good.
Bad.
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 Good.
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 Bad.
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 Good.
Good.
Good. Good.
Good.
Good.
Bad.
Bad.
Good.
Good.
Good. Good.
What?
Good.
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 Bad.
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 Good.
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 Bad.
Good.
Bad.
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 Good.
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 Bad.
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 Good.
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 Bad.
Bad.
Good.
Bad.
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 Good.
Good.
Bad.
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 Good.
Bad.
Good.
Good.
Bad.
Good.
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 Bad.
Good.
Good.
Bad.
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 Good.
Good.
Bad.
What?
Good.
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 Bad.
Good.
Good.
Bad.
Bad.
Good.
Good.
Bad.
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 Good.
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 Bad. Bad. Bad.
Bad.
All right.
So tough.
That was
Yeah.
tough.
That was kind of tough.
I'm a little disappointed that no one knew what JJD meant.
Let's go a little deeper there.
Well, I'm a little disappointed in my ability to do that.
We would like to thank at Canton Coders Brian Finster for submitting his code for that one.
He's not here to defend himself.
Here is he?
Right here.
All righty.
What was that, Norman? What?
Pull request denied.
Norman is picking on the people with the broadest shoulders, so it's considered a compliment.
So how did you all find this one? And say in
Tougher than I
comparison to
thought.
lines.
Very interesting.
What else?
From a
It
pattern
gets tough sometimes. Sort of in context, right? Was that name good or bad? And
it's harder to find the goods than the bads.
Yeah, well,
I think the pattern's harder to see, especially if it's a language you don't know as well.
Well,
Yeah.
so think about this. Who's our audience?
Our team members at 2 a.m.
Okay. How about the team members
of the code.
that just joined that knows next to nothing about our application?
Yeah, your audience is
Yeah.
your team if you
Think
don't
about that
plan on
one,
hiring
Renee.
anyone.
So all those abbreviations that might be good, fine for the experts that have been working 20 years on the code. How's that for the newbie?
There's a mentality of the long method being the same as the long variable name or the long method name, but I couldn't care less if the method name is a little longer, but it tells me what it does.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
As long as the parameters aren't crazy long and there's not a huge chain, it's okay.
Well, there's rules for that, right? So the more the narrower the scope, the longer the name should be, right?
That's the general rule of thumb. But again, that's probably another Canton Coders topic that would be worthwhile.
Yeah, I know a book for topics like that.
Want to try another one?
Yeah.
Anyone getting?
Yo, can we save one of the decks for the Twitch audience that will turn off Twitch at the end, and we'll invite everyone in Twitch that wants to come join us do it?
Sure, we can. Well, one of the things we can do is one of the things that I find valuable is besides these code smells is there's some categories of things that are useful. I find particularly the code paragraphs to be a really useful thing. It helps when you're thinking about how to refactor something, because you've got to think about what are the logical blocks or chunks or paragraphs or whatever you want to call them. Now, in the long lines, actually in the long methods, did you know, and sometimes in the naming conventions too, what relationship did you notice with comments? Anyone notice one?
With comments?
Comments.
Along the lines.
Yeah, the worst names need more comments, right?
Yeah. So that's a smell in itself. If your code needs lots of comments, that's probably a problem.
Makes sense.
You know?
You're so kind.
So from that, I'm going to do one more here on clutter. Then I'm going to break for a little discussion about how to do these. You can look at inconsistency, some other things, and then I'm going to save, if you want to, the Twitch move into Zoom for paragraphs. That sound okay?
That's good.
Sounds good.
You know, unless you hear something from folks on Twitch that think that's
Yep.
a terrible idea. Okay. Now, for this, we'll want to think about, we're going to ask whether it's relevant or whether it's clutter. Okay?
Okay.
Ready to give it a try?
Sure.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Relevant.
Relevant.
Okay. What about that?
Clutter.
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 Mm-hmm. How about this?
Clutter. Relevant.
Relevant. Yep.
Clutter.
Clutter.
Garbage.
Garbage. That's not a word.
Clutter.
Relevant.
Oh, relevant.
Relevant.
Clutter.
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 Relevant.
Relevant.
What?
Relevant.
Relevant.
Clutter. Think.
Relevant.
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 Clutter.
Relevant.
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 Clutter.
Clutter.
Relevant.
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 Clutter.
Clutter.
Relevant.
Relevant.
Clutter.
Clutter.
Oh, hoarding.
Relevant. Oh yeah, it's clutter.
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 There's more clutter than not.
Clutter.
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 Relevant.
Relevant.
Clutter.
Relevant.
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 Clutter.
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 Clutter. Clutter.
Relevant.
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 Clutter.
That's clutter.
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 Relevant.
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 Clutter.
Clutter.
Relevant.
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 Clutter.
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 Relevant.
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 Clutter.
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 Relevant.
Clutter.
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 Relevant.
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 Clutter.
Oh, I see.
Clutter.
Clutter.
Relevant.
Relevant.
Clutter.
Clutter.
What?
Relevant.
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 Clutter.
Clutter.
Relevant.
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 Clutter.
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 Relevant.
Clutter.
Clutter.
Relevant.
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 Clutter.
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 Relevant.
Clutter.
Clutter.
All clutter.
Relevant.
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 Relevant. Yeah.
Clutter.
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 I mean clutter.
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 Relevant.
Clutter.
Relevant.
Clutter.
Clutter.
Relevant. Oh
Clutter.
yeah.
Clutter.
Clutter.
Relevant.
Oh.
Clutter.
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 Relevant.
Clutter.
Clutter.
Way too clutter.
Way too yeah.
Way too clutter.
Please don't comment your code just so you can go back to it.
So whose code was that?
We have GitHub for everything.
We probably won't because it's this way, but
So thank you for letting us review your code, Joel.
Clutter would be me.
Norman's code. Norman's been calling out everyone's code.
Guys, you all know I do PowerPoint for a living now.
Yeah, I didn't expect much else.
So why is clutter a problem?
It's dirty.
Ignoring the aesthetic, ignoring that, hey, we think this is a code smell. Why does this hurt?
It makes everything bigger than it needs to be, which spreads it out, which makes it more difficult to comprehend.
Yep.
There's not much stuff it's doing, but it's there.
But it's there.
If you're not going to read it, you don't need it. Also, if you're commenting out code so you can come back to it, then you're ignoring the fact that we have source control.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
One of the interesting things I've seen in refactoring is like sometimes you have to do a little cleanup to help things come into focus to where you can tell what refactorings you can apply. So this just having, especially in some of those cases, so much clutter to me would be just a lot of friction toward refactoring, which means that we're not going to clean the code up, which means it's probably going to rot.
Yeah.
Also, anyone that comes back to it is going to say, I'm not going to throw this away because someone commented out and left it for a reason. I don't want to touch it. And it's going to stay there forever.
We have to
when you see an entire page commented out and one line not, that's probably a problem.
I don't know about you guys, but I developed this optical disease where I can't see comments anymore. I just blink them out.
Next time, press delete as well.
I have my own disease. I delete comments if they're code that's been commented out. They're gone.
God, buddy.
But before you delete the comments, what do you do?
If it's code that's been commented out, it's gone.
If it's code that's commented out, yes. What about the other comments?
I'll read it. See if it's relevant,
Schedule
but if it's
vacation?
not relevant, I'll throw it away.
Okay, so what about the comments that are right before a bunch of code that also has the smell of bad names?
If the
I would
code
write
makes
a
no
test to
sense,
describe.
you need the code
sorry.
to make sense before you can delete the comment. But your comment should not be there to replace your code making sense. Your code should make sense before you write a comment.
Yeah, very few times will I write a comment, and when I do, it's because I want to make sure that people's attention is called to something that's in an external context. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
That's about the only time that I've got to use for a comment. Something that's beyond our control. We just have to freaking live with it, and you damn well better know about it, but you wouldn't know about it by looking at the code.
Right, like when your code has some really weird side effect that is something that just is either an artifact of this particular weird buggy version of the code base because the compiler has problems, or something else that's
Or library.
really strange.
Absolutely. Yeah. Or if what you're doing is delegating to a dependency and it's particularly persnickety. Yeah.
The only time a longer comment makes some sense is if you're using it to generate documentation outside of the code base. So if you're using something like JavaDoc and it's generating something outside of the code base, then okay, I can.
Yeah, if your comments are something better than returns the value, right? Or set the value.
Right. Right. If it's not something that the JavaDoc thing can generate on its own, cool. It's relevant.
I don't entirely agree with that, but okay.
Some of our history, as I say, I've been programming since the dinosaurs, and how we got there with too many comments is that we started with assembly language, and it's just plain unreadable. And so the rule of thumb at the time was one comment per line. You put it right next to the assembly language to try and give some sense of what was going on.
Yeah.
That context, it makes sense.
If you had the restrictions like the original version of the basic programming language, where your variables were limited to like 2 characters, it also made sense.
2? I thought it was 6.
Well, it all depended. Yeah, it depends what language you're working on. Or early databases. This doesn't apply anymore.
Right. Totally not.
But there's still a lot of code out there that has effects of this. There's some old coding standards that have the old thinking grained in.
Yeah. I can't remember
Need to
where
be updated big time.
I can't remember where I've seen this more recently, even within like certainly within the last 10 years, and maybe this has changed, but I want to say it was a database platform that had a pretty severe restriction on the length of table fields, the names of tables and fields. It felt very archaic because it was like 20 characters or less, if I recall.
Well, as far as legacy platforms are concerned, you're going to pry your database out of the DBA's cold dead fingers frequently.
I'll just go talk to the CFO and explain to them how much money they can save by switching to Postgres.
Well, I was working in a very large financial company, and the new teams, their solution was they wrote all their code to use MongoDB.
Oh, God.
Which
The same terrible naming.
But there are lots of approaches to it. Generally, you know, don't be adversarial with the DBAs. Invite them onto your team.
Invite them
part of
onto the mob.
What? Make them part of the mob. Yeah.
Yeah.
And everybody starts appreciating everybody else. If your managers come to your mobs.
Everybody else's problems, right?
They aren't everybody else's problems. Now they're our problems. Makes a difference.
No, they begin to appreciate the problems that other people in other roles have.
Yeah.
You know,
because they're not somebody else's, they're ours.
Yes, now. Yes.
You know, you're absolutely correct. When we were trying to trying to get CD up and running, we didn't yell at the DBAs because they were a roadblock. We went and got them on their team and explained how we could help them automate their processes, make their lives easier.
Yeah.
Got them on their side. It took months and months, but we got it done.
Okay. So I'm going to do the final part of the my particular slides, and then we're going to move to you know, on how to actually teach this. Then we're going to do something on paragraphs where we're going to invite them to Zoom, and then I'll invite questions. Is that okay? Probably about 6 or 7 minutes, maybe less, on tips and techniques for teaching this, and then a similar amount of time on paragraphs, and then questions. How many people do we have on Twitch, by the way, Joel? Anybody know?
31 people on Twitch.
Woo!
It's increasing, actually.
Yeah, we have a really healthy audience. So, Camille, the data says this is awesome.
Well, we got a couple of folks from my neck of the woods that said that they wanted to participate. So I'm going to move to a couple of bits here, and I mean, as long as that structure sounds reasonable to you.
Sounds great.
I think the data speaks great.
Okay. So things about teaching other people from using Sparrow decks. Let's make sure that I'm in the right spot. Yes, I am. Okay. So there are 4 main things that for the Sparrow decks to work have to be there. Everyone has to say their guess very quickly. Everyone has to say it out loud. Everyone needs immediate feedback, and everyone needs lots of repetition. Now, Llewellyn's Sparrow decks themselves provide the training material, and also the last 2 points, the immediate feedback and the repetition. As a facilitator, you need to ensure the first 2. It's important to say the guess quickly to turn off the mental analysis. If you don't say it quickly, whoops, say, or hello, stop that, then I think I may have timing on my slides here, which I didn't mean to, but if you don't have it quickly, then you're going to have your mental analysis. We don't want that analytical mind going, and a quick guess also avoids people influencing each other. So quick guesses are critically important. If I'm in the room, if it's a room as opposed to a remote one, I tend to raise and lower my arm. And when the arm comes down, everyone makes the guess at the same time. And that really helps the aspect of not having, you know, getting other people's opinion, making them your own guess. I'm still experimenting on how to do this in a remote environment. Devs tend to be embarrassed if they publicly demonstrate they don't know something. So it's really important to start with the Sparrow decks to be effective, and because they're not embarrassed about being wrong on birds. And everyone needs to say things out loud. And that's what they get embarrassed about. So start with the birds. Nobody cares if you recognize a house or a song sparrow, and away you go. Okay, some more things. Llewellyn's blog, it's part of your download the PowerPoint slides. I have not tried this on Google Slides. It might or might not work because the use timing feature that you can do with slideshow on PowerPoint is critical to making this work. So I use PowerPoint for this. You want to make sure that that use timings is checked. Run your training to a large crowd wherever possible. This does not work usually to sit down with one person and just go over the deck. I've seen times that's been okay, but usually it's not. Always start with the sparrows. Do not skip that. And in order to I usually run the sparrows a second time, as I did today. And I do that just to make sure that everybody's really comfortable. And sometimes I'll run as I run also the technical ones, the code smells a second time. And you'll find that your folks recognize how much faster they are the second time on that. And they feel good about it. So today we have a number of people on both Zoom and Twitch. And the reason we did that is that I don't think that it supports a large number of folks. We didn't know exactly how many people we'd get on Zoom. I guess we'll find out. But that way, at least the folks on Twitch heard the voices on Zoom. So if that worked for you, you folks on Twitch, please let us know, put something in the chat. If it didn't, let us know that too. Okay. Can't emphasize enough how important it is to have everyone say their guesses quickly and out loud, and to start with song and house sparrows. You'll notice I keep repeating that. And that's because intuitive learning, you know, our perceptive learning does not happen if you don't do that. I like, after sparrows, start with a deck that's easiest. For me, that happens to be duplication. Your folks may be something else. And then start with things that are next easiest. I guess long lines might be easy, but you noticed we had more debate on long lines than we did on duplication.
Mm-hmm.
Whoops, we're not there yet. Also emphasize that it's okay to not get everything right. It's fine if you only get it 60 or 80% of the time. If team members can now recognize something 60, 80% of the time that's a code smell and they couldn't before, that's huge progress. And you may want to only run a few code smells or things through your team at one time. This could be tiring. Does anybody feel a little tired after doing this?
A little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I feel a little sick.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe we should have run fewer of them, but at least we're having a break now between now and doing the next thing. And repeat next decks as needed, and especially when you get new devs added to the team. So those are the things that I would focus on. I do stuff, I'll save this slide for when we have questions. Right now, we're going to move the folks on Twitch to Zoom. Okay, Joel, how are we planning to do that? Should I just put a link up here for them?
Yep, so what we're going to do is, if you go ahead and join our Slack, and that is slack.cantoncoders.org, we will put I will make sure the Zoom link is in every channel. Actually, someone on our group, Matt, can you go ahead and share that in our channels so everyone can see it? And with that, Camille, I think do you think it's appropriate time to wind up the Twitch stream?
Well, hang on. Let me make sure that I put this on the Twitch stream so that people can see it, because I can just bring up the Slack. Okay, there we go. Do you see this for Zoom?
Oh, they can just.
You're actually frozen somehow.
Oh,
like
frozen?
a peel away of your presentation.
Oh, okay.
Strangely warped.
Let me. So let's see. New
Hey,
share.
Camille,
Hang
rather
on.
than reveal the secret key on the Twitch chat,
Okay.
do it in Slack. Just because I don't think we're a big target, but there's some people out there that would love to show up and be kind of rude.
Okay. So it's in Slack. Do you want me to show what I have in Slack? I can just show that. What? Yes, no?
No, thank you.
Okay, I won't. All right.
So Matt put it in the Canton coders, general, just Canton coders.
The
And
main
then
channel.
we can put it also in announcements and in general.
Yep.
So first of all, let's close out the Twitch chat. Camille?
Okay. Does everyone know how to get to the Canton Coder Slack? Because I've got a number of folks who said that they would join who were not part of Canton Coders from the DC
Oh,
area.
are those your friends in your other meetup?
Some of them are, and some of them are not. Some of them are just people I've worked with.
So in that case, how do we get that to them? You know what? We're gonna risk it. I'm gonna type it into the Twitch chat.
Okay.
Yeah. Hey Matt, can you put it in the Twitch chat?
Yep.
And
I will admit people.
Yep.
If anybody acts like a nightmare, you can kick them out, right, Joel? So.
Right.
Yeah, Yusuf can. So
we got a couple people.
Cool. Joe, I want to thank you, Camille. First of all, I think everyone here learned something. I learned a lot, and I've gone through this. I've taught this. I learned more. So first of all, thank you for doing this.
You're welcome.
And if we want to get a hold of you, you're on Twitter at Agile Camille.
Yeah, hang on. I'll put that slide up a second. Where did I
think your screen's still frozen though.
My screen is still frozen. Hang on.
There you go.
Yep.
It's frozen now?
Nope.
Okay.
It's working.
Cool.
Okay. Current slide. There we go. Now you
And then, if you're new to Canton Coders, we'll roll out a June schedule. This small thing called COVID-19's kind of messed up our scheduling, but we'll be rolling out a schedule here the next week. I think in June you can look forward to either someone that has was a resident thinker for NYU and MIT on design thinking, or a former Fortune 500 CTO, and then we'll do some coding stuff on another meetup. So stay tuned, check out our Slack. You know I'm good at spamming people with information. But Camille, we appreciate this. Thank you so much. And we'll see the Twitch people on the inside.
All right. Hang on, and I'll move to that. Okay.